Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have a very special comparison video for you guys because it involves some very rare and hard to find juice. So first of all, a little bit about the perfume we're going to talk about today. So it is currently known as Creed's Royal Mayfair. All right, so this is what the 4-ounce bottle looks like. They've discontinued this particular bottle and they put it in 100 ml and 50 ml bottles. Rumor on the street is that even that is now discontinued. If you go to the Creed website, this fragrance is not on there anymore. Right? They've completely taken it off. So even though on Parfumo it shows that it is still available for purchase and it's still in production, I question that. I don't know whether that's true or not. And the reason that I say that this is a very tough comparison video to do, basically, I don't think anyone's done a comparison video of these two on YouTube as far as I'm aware, is that it was originally called something completely different. So in 2009, when this fragrance originally came out, it was called Creed's Windsor. And if you are seeing sort of the emotion and conviction in my voice as I'm starting this video, it's because this fragrance did something special on my journey. Actually, I'm going to do a fresh spray. Even though I've been wearing this for a while now, I'm going to do a fresh spray here of Windsor, and I'm going to do a fresh spray of Royal Mayfair, because we're going to do a little bit of a comparison. Now, I will say, number one, that these are very, very, very close. All right, so that's the first thing. So Creed's insane atomizer, that's 2 sprays. Look at that. Just absolutely douses your skin with juice. Oh, man. Okay. So, a little bit about the name. So, first of all, Windsor was named after the Duke of Windsor, who, when he was in line for the crown, was known as King Edward VIII, if I'm not mistaken. And he made international headlines when he abdicated the throne, which allowed the Queen, who recently passed away, to take over, okay? And that abdication made international headlines because he abdicated because he wanted to marry an American woman who he could not do if he would have stayed in line to be king, basically, right? So he gave up being a ruler for love, is the story. Beautiful story. Also, he is a Duke of... He ended up getting the title of Duke of Windsor, and he was an airman. He was one of the first, supposedly supposed to be one of the first airmen to be king of England when he was in line for the throne. And because of that, when Creed initially issued Windsor, they released it in a flacon. It was only released in the 8.4 ounce flacons, which I've shown on my channel before for things like Viking and Royal Oud. You've seen some of my flacons, right? But when they issued this one, they issued it in a leather pouch so you could take it on your aircraft, like a World War II flying helmet of sorts. I don't know what the hell Creed is doing. All I know is that this is a special fragrance, and some fragrances I sort of make notes. You've seen me read my notes and reference them in previous videos if you follow the channel. This is going to be one I'm going to speak from the heart, because honestly, this fragrance changed the entire trajectory of how I view perfumes, and I'll tell you why. Okay. So real quick, while I'm thinking about it, before I tell you the story about how this changed my trajectory of perfumes, real quick, just some comparison notes while they're fresh in my mind. So Windsor, first of all, starts off with a much muskier take on that opening of gin and pine and lime. Okay, so those are the 3 notes. So actually, officially, let me give you the note listing first so you know where we're coming from if you have no experience with this scent at all. So, it was created, if you believe Creed's backstory, it was actually created in 1936 as a bespoke fragrance for the Duke of Windsor. So outside of any of that backstory nonsense, it came out in 2009. And the notes, according to Creed at the time of release, were British gin, Jamaican lime, a touch of Scottish Highland pine, with a heart of Duke of Windsor roses, which we're going to discuss, a base of Bohemian oranges, Canadian cedar, and Australian eucalyptus, because we all know that Olivier Creed is scouring the world for the most rare and auspicious eucalyptus money can buy. So first of all, the differences when you spray these 2 fragrances from the beginning. So this opens up, I say this, Royal Mayfair, the current iteration, I would say opens up with a more effervescent take on that sort of gin, pine, and lime combination. Very interesting fragrance. So first of all, for all of the folks who say, Creed is just a house that makes designer fragrances in niche bottles, which is basically what they've become, this bucks that trend. This is a very unique and a very special perfume. I wore it on a special occasion this weekend, and it fits perfectly in a high society. If you're dressed nice, and you want to give off that air of just being posh, because to me, King Edward VIII, or the Duke of Windsor, that man had style. I mean, he had pizzazz. He had that elegance about him, right? He really did. The way he dressed, the way he carried himself, the way he spoke, the way just the aura, just being in his presence, right? If you see people around him, the paparazzi, his people, his English people, the way they responded to him, he was like a true icon, almost like a sex symbol, a playboy, right? And this gives off that sort of very high class, upper class vibe. It really does. It fits perfectly. And if you notice those notes that I read off, every single one of those notes comes from a part of the British Empire. Okay, if you notice that. And so British gin, Jamaican lime, Scottish Highland pine, Duke of Windsor roses, Bohemian orange, Canadian cedar, and Australian eucalyptus. So the whole point was that Creed created this fragrance with ingredients from all over the British Empire, okay? So all you people who are like, it's colonialism. I mean, you may not like this fragrance, but I absolutely adore it. So, so the differences right off the bat is that you're going to notice that there is a little bit of a sort of almost like you're smelling the process of distillation of the gin, right? In the Windsor version. This particular version, what ends up happening that really makes it different from the current version to me is the booziness turns into what smells like a little bit of a musky, piney sort of, it doesn't focus as much on those fresh, effervescent gin notes. And instantly in Royal Mayfair, the new one, the rose is prominent, front and center. Literally one of the most beautifully heartbreaking and elegant green roses you will ever smell. It is like just, it almost smells like you're smelling, in Royal Mayfair, it almost smells like you're smelling this very clear, very elegant, very pristine. You can almost see the water droplets just dripping off of it. Imagine like a private garden, the Duke of Windsor's private garden being watered by one of the landscapers, right? Just got done watering it, and you're looking at this flower bed going, that is the most beautiful flower I've ever seen. That's the way that the rose comes across in the newer version. The vintage Windsor, that rose is hidden. It's a little bit more, it's not as prominent in the sense that your nose tends to focus a little bit more on, I say, the distillation aspect of the gin, but there's almost something that gives off this musky, almost like you're smelling wheat beer, okay? That's the way that it really smells to me. It smells like you're smelling wheat beer. And the issue that the vintage has to me, not really an issue because people pay big money for the vintage. There are folks out there who say, oh man, Royal Mayfair is nothing like it used to be when it was Creed Windsor and all that. And I got this from a very reputable source, by the way. So I know this is proper Creed Windsor from the 2009 batch. In 2015, they re-released it under Royal Mayfair. And the reason they re-released it under Royal Mayfair is because if you know London, Mayfair is like the high-end shopping district, and Creed was opening up their new boutique in London. So to celebrate that event, they released Royal Mayfair, right, to celebrate that. So that's sort of the backstory. Now that it's being pulled from the lineup, it's kind of disappointing to me because this is one of the more unique and interesting Creeds. And so what makes it smell, what makes Windsor to me smell even more like wheat beer is as time goes on, what ends up happening is that fermented peaty-like smell, that distillation of alcohol smell, if you will, right? Maybe a little bit of like barley, right? Just gives off some of that for some reason. Very musky barley smell. Mixes with orange. There's a note of orange in the base. And it's a weird base note to have because lime comes at you first. It comes much more clearer in Royal Mayfair than it does Windsor. But what ends up happening in Windsor is that orange note comes to the forefront and lasts a lot longer. And because that orange note is more prominent and there's this weird alcohol-y, like peaty barley process going on, I still can't really put my finger exactly on what's going on. You can see I've worn this a couple times. This was my scent of the day today. This was my scent of the day Friday, and I'm comparing them. I've done comparison videos, well, not comparison videos, but I've done wearings where I've compared them myself, wearing them to bed and comparing them and making notes and stuff like that. But I decided to throw the notes away and speak from the heart because this fragrance really moves me. So what ends up happening with Creed Windsor, so if I'm bouncing around, excuse me, it's hard to talk about one and talk about the other and make sure you want to get all these points that are just in my head out. But basically what ends up happening with Windsor is that orange note is more prominent, as is that weird sort of barley muskiness, right? And it really does remind me of drinking like a Blue Moon. If you've ever had a Blue Moon, they put an orange with it, right? There's a little bit of this Blue Moon aspect to it because of the fact that distilled alcohol-like smell and the orange kind of mixed together with the other notes, the pine, and it's slightly muskier. The vintage is slightly muskier and slightly less defined. One of the things about Royal Mayfair that absolutely 100% blows my mind is the rose note. And I think what they've done with Royal Mayfair, my assumption on my skin, the way that this wears, is Royal Mayfair, it's almost like you can peer right into the heart. And the heart of this fragrance is literally that Duke of Windsor rose. And one of the most romantic, one of the most beautiful. It is slightly green. There's a green aspect to this because there's pine in the top. The rose note itself is slightly green, and there's tuberose. So what's interesting about this fragrance to me is if you've smelled something like Carnal Flower by Frederic Malle, right? There's this very camphoraceous eucalyptus note mixing with tuberose, right? Those two notes play very well off of each other. Tuberose sometimes has a slightly camphor-like smell on its own, and eucalyptus definitely has this camphoraceous-like smell. Definitely. Very green. Almost like, imagine cutting into like an aloe vera plant, right? And just peering on the inside of it, right? It's very green and tart. And eucalyptus, one of the biggest off-putting things for people about this fragrance from other people who have smelled, and you look at the dent I put in this, by the way. This is my dent. I've worn this. This is a hell of a wear for someone with my collection. You can see how much I love this. This is a 2015 batch, by the way. I don't have the box, but it is a 2015 batch. And so one of the biggest things that tends to put people off when it comes to Royal Mayfair is that eucalyptus note to them smells very medicinal. And it smells almost like you're smelling an essential oil. Almost like you're not smelling a fragrance, but you're smelling an essential oil. Some people love that. Other people hate it, right? This is one of those fragrances, and I'll go back to the story real quick before we continue talking about this. But I was going to tell initially, which no idea why I'm holding out on you guys. But this is one of those fragrances that can really put people off. And that's what brings us back to the story, because I bought this right around 2015 when it first came out, okay? And this is when I was wearing a lot of Creed, a lot of Amouage. Like, those were my brands at the time. I was like, if it's not a Creed or an Amouage, it's shit, which I was completely wrong about, 100% wrong about, right? That was early on in my journey, Ramsey, right? And so I was wearing a bunch of stuff like this. And I got to the point where I couldn't wear this anymore. Like, I tried it, I kept trying it, and something about it just didn't work with me. I was like, man, this is the worst Creed of all time. You know, what the hell is Creed doing? I just wear Aventus and Royal Oud and stuff like that back then. And you know, Royal Water, I went through an entire bottle of Royal Water, bought a second one. And, you know, those were the type of fragrances I was wearing back then, right? And so I was like, I can't do this. Like, I literally put it in its box and put it away and didn't look at it for years. Years I didn't look at it, right? And I almost gave it away. I almost just gave it to somebody. That's how much I was down on this fragrance. I was like, it just doesn't work for me. It's one of those things that doesn't work, right? Years went by, and this is a great example of why I don't sell fragrances, why I don't like to sell fragrances, period, is because years go by, my nose smelled a bunch of other things in those couple years, and I came back to this. And when I came back to it, it was literally like smelling a different perfume, 100%. The way my nose picked up the notes, the way it seemed blended, the way that the notes came to my nose, the way all of this, the way I experienced it, the headaches this fragrance used to give me, completely gone, right? And I have no idea whether it just sat in the bottle for a couple years, you know, with air in it, and sometimes the fragrances change, or whether just my taste changed. My guess is my tastes change. And that's the reason I always tell people to give fragrances time. Give the fragrances time to develop, not just in the bottle, because I'm not one of these people that's like, it's macerating in the bottle. Well, fragrances don't macerate. Perfumers macerate fragrances until they're ready to cut it off, right? The perfumer itself decides how long the fragrance macerates before they put it in the bottle. 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, whatever it is, right? It doesn't macerate in the bottle. That being said, there is something to taste changing and the way your nose smells certain notes. If you give someone an oud fragrance for the first time and have them smell it, they're going to think that oud fragrance smells completely different to an oud fragrance they've smelled 5 years after smelling oud after oud after oud after oud, right? And so this is my personal story on why you should not sell your fragrances, why you should hang on to them and give them a chance later on. Revisit them. If you ever smell something and you're offended by it, or if you ever smell something and you're like, oh, this is just not for me, like I can see why people love it, but there's no way it's for me, give it time. Your nose will change over time. So that's kind of the story here. But what ends up happening with Royal Mayfair, and the reason I prefer this particular version personally, I like Windsor. I like the fragrance, but it's almost like a rough draft, right? That's the way it feels to me. It's almost like Windsor was this exotic release that when it came out in 2009, they sold 8.4 ounce flacons for $400. So you talk about the Creed price hike now, right? Now these 100 ml bottles, this is 120 ml. They don't make these anymore, but the 100 mls they sell, if you go to creedboutique.com or whatever it is, creedfragrance.com, I forget the website, those are selling for 500 plus, right? Just for the 100 ml. And they were selling 200 or 500. What's the 8.4 ounce? They were selling the flacons, the big. I can't do math right now, nor do I feel like it. But yes, they were selling the big boy flacons for $400. And so I think it might be 500. I think that might be the 500 mil. No, that's not right. It's got to be the 250 mil. Yeah, it's got to be the 250. So they were selling 250 mils of Royal Mayfair for $400 when it came out. So think about how high the prices have gone since then. And I think Windsor, I think it's a good scent, but you know what it does? That very interesting contrast, because to me, some of my favorite perfumes of all time have amazing contrast between them, right? So you think about the contrast of something like Koros, right? Which I have yet to review Koros on the channel, but that will get a Vintage Hall of Fame review from me one of these days. One of my all-time favorite fragrances, top 5, okay? That is a contrast between this really weird, soapy, clean, aldehydic thing versus this extremely dirty, musky, civet, animalic-like smell, right? And how Pierre Bourdon contrasted those two. In Windsor, the original release, that sort of strange, peaty fuzziness, if you will, that muskiness, sort of gives a general haziness to the fragrance. You can't pick out the eucalyptus as easily. You can't pick out the rose as easily. There are some notes that are amped up, like, for example, the orange, which I said gives it that very strange blue moon beer-like effect, right? And it just smells generally hazy and older. Like this one smells like it actually came from 1936, right? It smells like you're smelling a fragrance that the Duke of Windsor wore 90 years ago, okay? And I know that's not true. I know that this fragrance was created by Creed in 2009. I know they're not selling stuff from their backstories that they create, right? I know that's not the case, but it smells older than Royal Mayfair. Royal Mayfair smells very, I would say, Royal Mayfair smells like they polished it up. They took this iteration of Creed Windsor and they polished it up. And both of them are good perfumes, but to me, I think this is the better one. I think that Royal Mayfair, in this iteration right here, feels like you can see all of the beautiful notes in and of themselves clearly. You can just peer right into them. And one of the most moving notes in here is this rose. I would call this a masculine rose. I would call this a masculine rose. It's slightly powdery, just ever so slightly, but so floral and fresh. One of the freshest, most vibrant rose notes I've smelled in a perfume of this type, right? Not smelling some, actual Taif rose oil or something like that. Not smelling actual Japanese rose oils, but in a composition like this from a brand, from a niche type brand like this, right? Or a designer brand. One of the most interesting releases as far as the different notes. I mean, think about this. Gin, pine, and lime in the top, with rose and tuberose in the heart, with eucalyptus, cedar, and orange in the base. Think about that breakdown. That's an insane breakdown. And I smell, especially in the in Royal Mayfair, and it's probably in Windsor as well, but it's just a little bit more hazy. Windsor just goes a little hazy. Now, as the time goes on, though, I will tell you the fragrances do this, and they get closer, right? So the first hour or two, you're going to notice the biggest similarities between the two. But as they come together, they do sort of go like this, kind of like two lines that get closer and closer and closer, but they never touch, kind of thing. That's what these two fragrances feel like. They're definitely the same fragrance, but the iterations are slightly different. Now, there are some people that may like this Windsor iteration because of the fact that this boozy aspect is amped up. It almost smells like, I don't know how gin is distilled necessarily, but it almost smells like you're smelling gin distilled like beer, right? In a strange, foamy, hoppy way, right? If that makes sense. And everything just seems slightly muskier, like there's some underlying musk that is not listed in here. And some people may prefer that. And you know what? It may be as simple as if this was the first fragrance that I wore, and I wore as much of this, as I did, or as much of this as I did this, that I may love this one more, that it may be the one I prefer. But I think because this is the one that I ended up getting and wearing first, and then about 3 or 4 years ago, I got this decant from a friend, and I've been just nursing the hell out of it because it's so rare. I think my preference is Rich Mitch has a theory that the fragrance you smell first is the version you smell first of a particular fragrance is the one you prefer, and I think there might be some truth to that, because when I wear Windsor like I have today, and I've only done it 3 times. This is only the 3rd time I've worn Windsor as a full scent of the day. Okay. And so like today I'm wearing Windsor as my scent of the day, and I'm looking for that the sharpness, the tartness, sort of the definitive contrast, how you can just place one note up against the other in Royal Mayfair. And it's not there because of that general musky haziness, that almost like fog over the English Channel. There really is just this, you want to peer through and you want to see it. You're up in the air, you're flying over, you want to see the beautiful sights below, but the fog is just sort of keeping everything, the haze in the channel is just sort of keeping everything at bay, right? That's the way Windsor feels to me. Now, there is a part of the rose in Windsor which comes across as a little bit more violet-like, right? Almost a little bit more Parma violet-like, whereas the rose here doesn't come across as violet-like. It doesn't come across as having... and you know what? There's almost like this suede. And if you actually look... And there is no suede, there is no leather note listed, but if you actually look at this sort of front piece right here, this is like suede. I don't know if you can tell from my finger touching it, but it's almost like suede, right? It's so soft and smooth, and that's really how this fragrance feels. This is a smooth operator fragrance. This is a pull up in the, Rover, because I guess you're in England, right? So you pull up in your new $200,000 Rover, because I think that's what the new ones go for, and they are badass. The new Rovers are, so imagine you pull up in your new spaceship-like Rover, you get out, the women at the high-end shopping place, they just take one look at you and smell you, they're all over you. You don't even have to make a move, right? That's Royal Windsor to me. It just has this elegance about it, never low class, never too showy. You're doing everything that you do with your flair and style, and there's a certain classical elegance to this fragrance. I heard some reviewers say there's a barbershop element to this fragrance. And it's an interesting take, because to have these type of notes, it doesn't feel like a barbershop fragrance when you wear it. So if you wear classic traditional barbershop fragrances, you won't get that at all. But I understand what they're trying to say, in that there is this general sort of freshness about it, and like this sort of, if you take a barbershop scent of old, right? Like if you take something like Paco Rabanne Pour Homme, right? One of my all-time favorite barbershop fougères, right? All time. And I'll do a Vintage Hall of Fame review on this one of these days. But there's this just sort of outdoor feel. There's just this green, outdoor, like you're with nature feel. Royal Mayfair gives that to me. There's something in the pine, the eucalyptus, that camphor eucalyptus, that very sharp and tart contrast with that beautiful, the rose note is, I am floored by this rose note. This rose note is one of my all-time favorite rose notes in perfumery. For if you want like a masculine rose, if you're a man who hates rose, if you're like, rose is not for me, and you just can't wear like the traditional rose fragrances, give this one a shot. But give it a shot when you're dressed like this, or you have a suit jacket on, you're going to a nice dinner, maybe you're going to a club afterwards, or, something like that, right? You're going on a date, or you can't wear, you could wear this wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt. I wear my fragrances however I'm dressed, I don't care. But this fragrance, I think, suits better for a little formal, because there is something about this that just screams this, think of traditional British sort of, rules, or high society manners, or just think about like old style British, think about old style British men sitting around in a like exclusive lounge of some club, right? They're going to be dressed properly, right? That's the air that this fragrance sort of gives me. It is very fresh, and you will get the rose, but what's so interesting about it is the contrast with the sort of Creed-like creamy woods in the base. There's a very smooth wood. Now they say cedar, and I definitely get the cedar, but you're not going to get like this. You're not going to get like this pencil shaving cedar. Instead, I think they've mixed it. I think they've done cedar and Creed sandalwood is my guess. That's my guess. I don't know if that's true or not, but it feels like you get some of that very traditional, very smooth Creed sandalwood that you have come to know over the years, right? Very, very elegant, very proper, very dressed up. Beautiful, beautiful fragrance. One of the best Creeds, and if it is discontinued for things like Carmina, and they're bringing back Millesime 18, whatever it is, I forget what the new Millesime is called, 1849, which I have the original, which came out in 2013, I think it was. Yeah, because I think they're doing it for the 10-year anniversary of it or something. But I'll review it since they're re-releasing it. I'll review Millesime 1849. But they're putting things out like Carmina, the new Aventus Absolute, this new Millesime 1849, and they're discontinuing, to me, some of their best. And so this is a heartbreaking discontinuation to me. You can tell how much I love this. The gin with that, see, the orange is so much more prominent in Windsor. And when you mix it with that musky, barley vibe, that hoppy, weird gin slash beer vibe which you get. It really makes it go in a little bit of a different direction. So the fragrances, they are kind of, like I said, they're definitely the same fragrance, but the execution of them is so different from what Creed did in 2009 to 2015's re-release. So if this is truly discontinued, and as of this writing, I think if you just search Creed Royal Mayfair, right, there are bottles floating around you can get a 4-ounce right now from a site I've never used before, but Perfumes Andrea for $250. To me, that is half price of retail, and you're getting the vintage 4-ounce. Great deal. Now, I think I paid $100 and something for this, $150 or something when I bought it. So you used to be able to find these less talked about Creeds for a good deal, for a better deal. But I would say this is one, if you're someone who is like, this is a brand that doesn't do anything unique or anything like that, try this out. Check this out. Let me read you the blurb and then we'll go. So here's what Creed said when it was still on the website. It's now, if you can pull this page up, but there's no buy button. It just takes you to like a red circle arrow, a circle with a line through it saying, sorry, you can't add it to the cart. But here's what they say. A green and invigorating fragrance, which is elegant, fresh, and effortlessly British. I agree with that. With zesty head notes of juniper berries and lime to recreate a classic gin and tonic, aromatic Scottish Highland pine offers an uplifting burst of green freshness. The heart opens up to a bouquet of dewy rose. Yes, I didn't even know they said dewy rose, but I agree. There is something about this rose which feels very wet. In all its multifaceted grace and pure opulence, peppered with a hint of fresh green notes. Mentholated eucalyptus, that's a great way to put it, very mentholated. And bitter orange gives yet another stylish twist to this unique and unorthodox scent. Yes, absolutely agree with that little blurb. And I personally think it's one of the most unique Creeds, in my opinion. And so this is easily one that I can recommend. You know, this sort of comparison video, because this is such rare juice, this may not be helpful to very many people. There are very few people who are going to go spend thousands on a discontinued flacon of Creed Windsor. But if by whatever chance someone comes across it, I hope this, if anything, at least educates somebody on what came before and what is still sort of available right now. I think it's just a beautifully natural, you know, this is one of those fragrances that I think really makes a man stand out, right? You wear this to some sort of elegant event, nobody will smell like you. And everything in here smells posh and high class and elegant. Like I said, like King Edward VIII was before he, well, he was still elegant living in Paris or wherever he ended up living when he was Duke of Windsor. But man, just for the beauty of the notes in this fragrance and the way they come across, this is a solid thumbs up for me. I don't do ratings, but very, very impressed with this and very sad at the direction that Creed is going. They're another one of my favorite brands from the past. You know, Creed and Amouage, my old niche brands, which I absolutely used to love, that I am just completely and utterly, I would say, I'm just numb. That's the word. When they put stuff out now, I'm just totally numb. I've never smelled Carmina or whatever the Creed, and I don't care to. I mean, if someone sent me some, I'll do a video on it, but I'm not like, oh man, I can't smell Carmina. I could give two shits, right? Ditto with what Amouage is doing. They're releasing the new silver crystal and gold crystal. They're doing 500 bottles each, and they want almost $2,000 a bottle. So I'm just numb to what some of these niche houses are doing, but it's sad to see because these are kind of some of the old guard fragrances from when I absolutely used to love them. And it really does just kind of take me back to a time when Fragcom and fragrances in general just seemed, you know, Fragcom turned into this very, people realized the potential money in it is really what it is. A lot of folks are doing videos now to be YouTube famous, to whatever you want to call it, you know, to monetize the channel and all that stuff. And, you know, if you look at every single video in the thumbnail, I try and always give off a big smile, because that's how I feel when I get to do this. This is a joy and an honor for me. And I'm excited to keep it that way. And these type of fragrances are the fragrances that keep it for me. You can tell how emotionally moved this fragrance moves me. It's a special fragrance, and I'll cherish the juice I have. I'll try to only wear it on, you know, special occasions going forward. But if you have experience with Creed Windsor, the OG, or the re-release Royal Mayfair, do let me know. Let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know what your thoughts are on the direction of Creed and some of these houses. Now, it looks like now that Creed is owned by this new company, that Caring, that I think it's Caring, that they are just going to start pumping the releases out. That's what it really feels like. Like BlackRock kind of sat on their hands. They didn't really release much. And apparently, rumor is they doubled their profit that they bought Creed for and that they sold it for a couple years later. And now I think that they sold them to Caring. You're going to start seeing the Creed releases. Here come the Creeds, is my guess. But I'm just going to sit on my old bottles, enjoy the juice I have. I'll watch with amusement as new fragrances, you know, fly by the screen. I'll review that Millesime 1849 since it's their new release and I've got the vintage. I just can't say I'm excited for what some of these houses are doing. But anyways, that's sort of my thoughts on Creed Royal Mayfair. Thank you to everybody who's watching, commenting, subscribed over the years. Thank you to everyone who supports me. Also, before I go, I'm going to try to mention this on every video from now until December the 10th, because on December the 10th at noon Central Standard Time, I will be going live on a live stream with the great Sultan Pasha, the maestro of the Attar. And I'm going to try to review a couple of these before that happens. That's my hope. Although these are very, very hard to review. And I really feel like I'm out of my element, but I want to try and learn more about Attars, and I'm going to ask him a lot of questions on the live stream about the differences in Attar making versus perfume making, you know, and how he perceives the differences as a creator. So, if you like, you know, perfumery that goes its own direction, that doesn't follow the trend, I'm not a big Attar guy, but I'll tell you what, of all the Attars I've smelled, and I've smelled a couple companies Attars, you know, I have the Amouage Attars. I've got the whole set. Someone sent me the whole sample set or whatever, so I can do videos on them. But those Amouage Attars, they don't hold a candle to the Sultan Pasha Attar. Sultan Pasha is like the, you know, he's like the Mozart of the Attar business to me. Like if I was an Attar guy, honestly, if I was like, I love Attars and I want to wear Attars, which I don't, because I like to spray my fragrances, so I really can't wait for his sprayable Attars, which he's been working on for years and should be coming soon. But if I was a Attar guy, I would wear Sultan Pasha's work exclusively. And he has so many fragrances too to explore and get to know, and he's a special creator, so I can't wait to have him on the channel. Blessed to have him on the channel, and to get to know his work further. So do tune into that December 10th, Sunday at noon Central Standard Time if you get a chance. So thanks for watching, everybody. Hope to see your faces in the comments. Cheers, guys. Catch you next time. Bye-bye.